got a question from a viewer, and I'm going to be better about saying your names, guys, because I do a lot of videos inspired from things you've asked in our comments, but I never say your name, so you never know if I'm answering your question. So Frenchie Animinies asked, what are mistakes that young comic artists should avoid? There are lots of mistakes you're going to make as a young comic artist or as a beginner comic artist. You don't have to be young to be new at it. I would say you're going to make a lot of mistakes. It just comes with the territory of starting something new, right? And it's totally okay to make all these mistakes that I'm going to list, because it's just going to be part of your art journey. You're gonna learn and grow from it, so don't be terrified about, like, messing up. It's gonna happen, but it's gonna be okay. So here we go. I have a top 10 list in no particular order. Number 1, and I think this is, like, the piece of advice I give out most to new comic artists, it's that your first comic should not be a 1,000+ page epic. Like, if there's a story that you've been dying to tell for years and you know that it's gonna be like 20 volumes and it's got like a massive cast of characters and it's gonna be amazing and the next Lord of the Rings and it's gonna be beautiful, save that until you have a little experience under your belt, because you're gonna disappoint yourself. It happened with me and Bones, and I've talked to other artists where the same thing has happened to them. It's best to start small. So with your first comic, when you're learning things, do something that's under 100 pages. If you put out 2 pages a week, that is a little over 1 year of working on a comic, right? That's a long time. And that's only for 100 pages. If you're doing something that's going to be like thousands of pages, you're going to be working on this thing for like a decade. So for your first comic, start small, test the waters, try different things out, make lots of mistakes, and then you can move on to your big epic once you've learned all this stuff. And make it the most beautiful epic thing that's ever gonna happen. Because you'll be awesome and you'll have all these small projects under your belt. So yeah, small project, a lot easier to manage. You can get all your mistakes out as a new comic artist, and the stakes won't be as high. It won't matter so much that you're making mistakes because it's gonna be small and you're gonna be done it in a year. Now, number 2, when you are making your comics, be very careful not to use low quality working files. This is a mistake I personally made early on with my first comic. I will never be able to print the first few pages of Sovereign, and that is because I worked with super tiny Photoshop files. They will never be print quality. They were like 72 DPI, and they were tiny, tiny canvases. I will never be able to get those to print quality without redoing them. So if you ever think that you want to take your comic and print it, use high quality working files. Use like 300 DPI. If you're planning to print, use large canvas sizes like, that are several thousand pixels wide and tall. I usually do a canvas that's about like, 2,000 something by 3,000 something. I don't know what the exact numbers are. I'd have to double check. But yeah, work big. It'll save you a lot of pain and reworking pages in the future when you want to print your book. Number 4, avoid having an inconsistent update schedule for your comic. Have you ever had a comic that you love and suddenly it goes on hiatus or it just doesn't update for like 6 months and you check back every day and there's no update and you're always wondering when they're going to update the comic because you're really invested and you love it, and then eventually you stop checking because, well, it's never going to update again, they've disappeared, so you forget about it because, there's more comics popping up on your feed that are actually updating. If you've ever been through that, you know how frustrating it is. Don't do that to your readership. You're going to lose readers if you don't update consistently and post your comic pages consistently, and you'll probably cause yourself a lot of anxiety because when you go for a really long time without posting a page, that anxiety builds up and you feel like it has to be like super extra good because you haven't posted in a long time. So what I recommend is, now it depends on how much time you have to work on your comic. I think the optimal update schedule is like 1 to 2 times a week. So like Tuesdays and Thursdays or something every week. That's a really great pace to keep. It'll keep your comic fresh in people's minds and you get your pages out quicker. However, if you just don't have the time to do that, or it takes you a really long time to get your pages done, it's totally okay to post them once a month or maybe every 2 weeks. as long as you're doing it consistently so that people know when to come back to your comic to check for an update. Did I say number 4 last time? This one's number 4. Expecting overnight fame. This is another thing that Bones and I did when we first started comics. We posted our first comic and we expected it to blow up. We were like, we are going to be like superstars of the comic world, and like everyone's going to read our comic and they're going to love it because it's so amazing. And yeah, I just expected us to like have a following out of nowhere. Our comic would be super popular. It didn't happen. And I was really silly to think that that's how it would go. If you go into your first comic expecting to be super famous, you're just going to disappoint yourself. And that sounds really sad and really disappointing, but you'll build a following over time. Every artist or famous person that pops up, like they seem like they pop up out of nowhere and they're super popular, they've probably been working on their career for years. You just haven't heard of them until, you know, this project blew up, or they finally gained a large enough following for it to trickle into your feed. That's what happened with Bones and I. We worked on our comic for like 4 years before people started reading it, and we even had to start on a new comic before we really got any traction. So don't expect it to be instantaneous. You'll save yourself a lot of heartache. Just be very thankful and grateful for the readers that you do have, even if it's just like 1 or 2 people. Treat them good. And the one thing that'll also help with getting to that point where you have lots of readers down the road is make sure you reach out and network with people. That is something that I've always struggled with. I'm a very shy person. I find it very hard to reach out and make friends with people, especially online. But you gotta make sure that you do it even when it's hard and when it's scary. It's just reach out to people, engage with other artists' work, and make friends in the comic community, because that will bring you more readers and friends who will support you. So yeah. Number 5, stop avoiding hard things, especially backgrounds. Just because something is hard to draw doesn't mean you should avoid it. When something is really hard and frustrating to draw, you should probably focus on it, because the more you practice it, the easier it'll get. Because if you have a comic, always make sure you're pushing yourself to improve your work, try new things, keep working at stuff even when it's hard and frustrating. Because you don't want a comic that is only ever shots of people from the waist up, and you never see their hands, and there are no backgrounds in your comic. You don't want to have that, because it makes for a really boring comic. Make sure you practice the hard stuff, put it in your comic. That is like the easiest way to force yourself to do it. If you hate drawing cars, put them in your comic. You'll have to learn how to draw them. So yeah. Stop avoiding hard stuff. It'll make your comics better. Number 6, unreadable speech bubbles and typography. This is something that personally drives me crazy with new comics. Not as in new as in recent. This has always been a thing with webcomics. But nothing makes me drop a comic faster than when I can't read it. Make sure there's enough space in your speech bubbles to hold the words that they're in. And make sure that they have a little extra room in the bubble so that I can read them comfortably. Don't have your letters spilling out of the bubble. Don't squish them into a tiny bubble so they're all mushed up together and overlapping the lines of the speech bubble. Just don't do it. Also, use a comic font. You can find them all over the place. Blambot is a great place to go. It's a website that has lots of amazing comic fonts for free. And if you can't find a comic font you like, use something that's very legible and at a size that people can read, and they don't have to squint at tiny print. And if you're handwriting your typography, make sure that it is legible and clean. Test it with friends. Number 7, another mistake I see a lot of new comic artists do is forgetting page flow and not planning their speech bubble placement. Now, I'm a little forgiving on this because when you're new to comics, you might not know everything, and that's fine. You can learn as you go. But if you're listening to this, make sure you plan where you put your speech bubbles in your pages. Don't be afraid to cover up your pretty artwork with speech bubbles. Plan them in from the start. And don't shove them off into the little corner where I can't read them. Don't put them in your gutters. Be nice to your speech bubbles. They are part of your composition and they need to be respected. And make sure that you're paying attention to the flow of your comic. Flow is just the way your artwork leads the reader's eye from one panel to the next. The job of each panel should be to get your reader to the next panel and then on to the next page. So as long as you're keeping that in mind, I have some other videos on this channel about Comic Flow, go check it out if you want to learn more about it, but always make sure to keep flow in mind. It gets really annoying when I'm reading a comic and it throws me off the page and I'm frustrated and I don't know which panel to look at next, so make sure you're keeping your flow in mind. Number 8. Another mistake a new comic artist can make is not doing enough prep work. Nothing will make your comic go on hiatus faster than not having any of your work prepped. Now, I am notoriously bad for doing prep work. Just watch my vlogs if you ever want to hear me rant about that. But if you're going into making a comic, make sure you do character reference sheets. Make sure that you are doing thumbnails and storyboards for your pages. Make sure that you have a solid script, all that stuff. It'll save you so much pain in the future. It'll stop you from having to, create new character designs on the fly the night before you need to post a page. And it'll just make your life way easier because creating pages takes a long time. And it's great to have just this foundation of prep work ready to go. And along the same lines, number 9, another mistake I see all the time is when artists don't have a script or an outline. Your work will suffer if you are way too on the fly with your pages. If you don't have a script, if you don't know where your story's going, you're gonna get stuck. You're gonna hit a plot hole, or you'll run out of ideas because you're having a hard time. Whatever it is, it just makes work harder for you. Now, I usually recommend for new comic creators to write their whole script before they start. However, I know that's a little unrealistic because that doesn't work for everyone. However, if your first project is 100 pages, it's pretty easy to write a comic script for that. So just start with small projects, get in the habit of writing your whole script if you can. It'll save you a lot of pain in the long run. If you don't think you can do a whole script, if that ruins the fun for you or that's just not how you work, at least try to have a detailed outline so that you don't get stuck and you know where your story's going. If you have room to foreshadow your story and plan it out really well by having a script, that is so amazing to have, and it'll save you a lot of pain, like I keep saying. It'll stop you from wasting pages with, random fluff, or you don't know where things are going. It'll save you from wasting pages, and it'll stop you from getting stuck. And number 10, I think one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of new comic creators face is that they never actually start working on their comic. If you never start working on it, you're always going to be a beginner. And I know that starting a comic and posting it is really scary and overwhelming. There's so many moving pieces to a comic, especially if you're doing it all on your own. If you have to write your own script, do your own artwork, do your prep work and your marketing, and post the pages, all that stuff, it can be really overwhelming and scary. However, you just gotta start. Stop just talking about your comic and how great it's gonna be. Start working on pages. Start designing your characters and your set designs, and start writing your script. Even if it's bad, you can always do another pass at it. You have as many opportunities to redo it as you want, so just start. Yeah. Because I remember when I was a teenager, I always had a million ideas for comics, and I never started any of them until I started working with Bones. And it's just been so amazing since I started making comics and posting them. Having a consistent schedule, posting stuff, networking with the comic community, having Bones handle all the script stuff was amazing for me because that was something that always overwhelmed me. But yeah, just since dipping my toe into the water of webcomics, it's just been great. So don't be afraid to start. Make your dreams come true. Follow your heart. I feel like this video has gotten really long. So yeah, I hope that helps guide your way a little bit if you're starting a comic. Like I said, it's super scary, it's super overwhelming, but you can do it. I believe in you. It's okay to make any of the mistakes that I've listed here. That's just part of the learning process. I went through most of these. If you look at my early work, it's full of terrible mistakes with flow and typography, and I had a huge head about things. I thought I was gonna be so cool and successful. And, I guess I got there. I'm at a really good place with my art career now. It just took some time. Try new things. Don't worry about making mistakes. I guess just keep them in mind. It might save you some pain. Either way, as long as you're making pages and having fun, that's what's important. There we go. I think that's all I have. Still, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to request a video topic, please leave a comment down below. If you'd like to see more videos about making webcomics and writing webcomics and cool art comic stuff, please make sure to subscribe. And if you want to check out any of my work with comics, please check out our Ticktail store. There's a link for it in the description down below. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye!